The desperate call. The final hour. Ambassador Keithra stood before the towering crystal windows of the High Council chamber, her translucent blue skin shimmering with distress patterns. Beyond the transparent walls, the peaceful cities of Zephyria, Prime sparkled like jewels against the purple evening sky. Soon none of it would exist. The calculations are confirmed, High Counselor Vextai announced, his voice carrying the weight of extinction. The swarm will reach our homeworld in 72 hours. Our evacuation ships can save perhaps 10% of our population. The assembled council members, each representing billions of Zephyrian citizens, remained silent. Their species had known peace for over 3,000 years. They were traders, philosophers, and artists. They had never known war. What of the Galactic Alliance? Asked Counselor Nexve, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. The Centaurians have sealed their borders, Vextai replied. The Alterans offer sanctuary to our cultural archives, but no military aid. The Proxima Collective suggests diplomatic contact with the swarm. A bitter laugh escaped Kethra's throat. Diplomatic contact with machines that consume everything in their path. The Alliance has grown soft in their peace. Then we face extinction with dignity, Vextai said. As our ancestors did when the great storms threatened our homeworld millennia. No. Kethra turned from the window, her skin now pulsing with determination. There is one option we have not considered. The council exchanged glances. Kethra had always been the most progressive among them, the one who argued for expanding their horizons beyond the comfortable borders of known space. The ancient protocols, she continued. The Universal Distress Beacon. Protocol 7 Alpha. That system is older than our civilization, protested Counselor Hexvok. No one responds to those signals anymore. Someone might, Kethra insisted. There are species beyond our alliance, worlds we have never contacted. If any of them possess the capability to fight the swarm, and what if they are worse than the swarm? Vextai asked. What if we call monsters to save us from monsters? Kethra looked again at the peaceful cities below, at the children playing in the gardens, at the elderly sharing stories under the crystal trees. Then at least we will have tried. Earth's Answer Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the display screen that had been flashing for the past 10 minutes. The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Earth's moon was usually quiet during the night shift, tracking routine asteroid movements and monitoring space traffic. This was not routine. Computer, analyze signal pattern, she commanded, her voice cutting through the hum of the station's life support systems. Pattern matches Protocol 7 Alpha, the computer responded in its crisp synthetic voice. Ancient Universal Distress Code, Signal Origin, Zephyria System, approximately 57 light-years from Earth. Sarah sat up straight. She had studied xenolinguistics at the Academy, but a real first-contact situation was beyond anything she had imagined when she took this assignment. Decode message. The translation appeared on her screen in stark white letters. Our worlds die. The swarm consumes all. We have no weapons, we have no warriors. If anyone hears this, if anyone can fight, please help us. We offer everything we have, please. Our children sing their last songs. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for the priority communication array. This was above her clearance level, but some things transcended protocol. Command Center, this is Deep Space Station Echo 7. Priority Alpha alert. We have a genuine first contact situation. Patch me through to Admiral Morrison immediately. 3 hours later, Sarah stood in the Situation Room of Earth Defense Command, surrounded by the most powerful military leaders in human space. Admiral Morrison, a gray-haired veteran of the Martian conflict, studied the translated message while Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading xenobiologist, examined the signal data. 57 light-years, General Rodriguez muttered. That's beyond our established territories. We'd be going in blind. The signal is authentic, Dr. Webb reported. The linguistics are consistent with a civilization that has had no contact with Earth. They're not using any known human languages as a basis. Admiral Morrison leaned forward. What do we know about this swarm they're talking about? Nothing concrete, Sarah replied. But based on the translation, It sounds like some kind of consuming force. The Zephyrians mention having no weapons and no warriors, which suggests they're a peaceful species. Peaceful species don't survive first contact with hostile forces, Captain Riley Martinez observed. He was the youngest person in the room, but his reputation as a tactical genius had earned him a place at the table. If this swarm is as dangerous as they suggest, we need to know what we're facing. The question is, Morrison said slowly, do we have the right to ignore a call for help? The question, Rodriguez countered, is whether we have the right to risk human lives for aliens we've never met. Sarah stepped forward. With respect, sir, this isn't about rights. It's about what kind of species we want to be. These people are facing extinction. They've reached out across the galaxy for help, and we're the only ones who answered. How do you know we're the only ones? Webb asked. Because if anyone else had the capability and the will to help, they would have already done so, Sarah replied. This signal has been broadcasting for days. If the established galactic powers aren't responding, it's because they either can't or won't. Morrison stood and walked to the holographic display showing the Zephyria system. Captain Martinez, how long would it take to assemble a response fleet? Depends on the size of the fleet, Martinez replied. For a reconnaissance mission, 6 hours. For a full battle group, 18 hours. This isn't a reconnaissance mission, Morrison decided. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. I want every available ship, every Marine, every piece of technology we can get our hands on. Commander Chen, you'll serve as our xenolinguist and first contact specialist. Dr. Webb, you're our science advisor. Captain Martinez, you'll coordinate our military response. Sir? Rodriguez protested. This could be a trap. We don't know anything about these Zephyrians. No, Morrison agreed. But we know something about ourselves. We're the species that evolved on a world where everything tried to kill us. We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We're the species that looked at the stars and decided we belonged there. He turned to face the room. And we're the species that doesn't leave anyone behind. First contact. The journey to the Zephyria system took 18 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. Sarah spent most of that time learning everything she could about Zephyrian culture from their broadcasts. They were indeed a peaceful species, one that had never developed weapons more advanced than farming tools. Their society was built around art, trade, and philosophy. They're going to be shocked when they see us, Dr. Webb observed as they prepared for the final jump. Their concept of warfare is completely theoretical. That might work in our favor, Captain Martinez replied. If they've never seen real military tactics, neither has this swarm. Sarah studied the tactical display showing the Zephyria system. 3 planets, 2 of them inhabited, surrounded by a network of trade stations and peaceful settlements. According to their latest communications, the swarm had already consumed the outer stations and was moving toward the inhabited worlds. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian High Council, the communications officer reported. Put it through, Morrison ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was melodious, almost musical, but filled with desperation. Unknown vessels, we are the Zephyrian High Council. We thank you for answering our call. We offer you everything we have in exchange for your help. Our ships are not equipped for battle. Our people do not know war. Please, we beg you. Sarah activated the translation system. This is Admiral Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're here to help. Can you tell us more about this swarm? They came from beyond the galactic rim, the Zephyrian voice replied. Machines that consume everything, planets, ships, even stars. They convert matter into more of themselves. We tried to communicate, but they do not respond. They simply consume. Martinez leaned forward. Self-replicating machines, that explains why no one else wants to fight them. You can't negotiate with them, can't predict them, can't reason with them. Admiral, the sensors officer called out. We're detecting massive energy signatures in the outer system. Whatever this swarm is, it's big. How big? Morrison asked. Sir, there are over 10,000 individual craft, each one larger than our biggest battleships, and they're all moving toward the inner planets. The bridge fell silent. Sarah felt her stomach sink as she realized the magnitude of what they faced. The entire Earth Defense Fleet consisted of 47 ships. "Well," Martinez said quietly, "we've definitely answered the call of the underdog." Ambassador Kethra watched the human ships approach through the observation deck of the Zephyrian capital ship. She had expected larger vessels, perhaps more advanced technology. The human fleet looked almost primitive compared to Zephyrian designs. "Are you certain these beings can help us?" High Counselor Vextai asked. "They answered our call," Kethra replied. "That alone makes them unique among the galaxy's species." "But can they fight the swarm?" Before Kethra could answer, the human admiral's voice came through the communication system. "Zephyrian Council, this is Admiral Morrison. We need to talk immediately. We have a battle plan, but it's going to require everything you've got." "Battle plan?" Vextai whispered. "They speak of war as if it's routine." Kethra felt a chill run through her translucent skin. Perhaps they had called monsters to save them from monsters. But as she looked at the peaceful cities below, at the children who would die if the swarm reached them, she knew they had no choice. "Admiral Morrison," she transmitted, "we are ready to listen." When Deathworlders answer, the Art of War Captain, Riley Martinez stood in the briefing room of the UES Endeavor, studying the faces of the Zephyrian leadership. They were beautiful beings, he had to admit, with their translucent blue skin and luminous eyes. They also looked terrified. "Let me understand this correctly," he said, his voice steady but incredulous. "Your entire species has never fought a war. Not one. In 3,000 years. Ambassador Kethra nodded slowly. "We resolved conflicts through meditation and economic cooperation. Violence was considered primitive." "Jesus," muttered Sergeant Collins, one of Martinez's Marines. "No wonder they're getting eaten alive." "Sergeant," Martinez warned, but he understood the sentiment. These beings had lived in paradise for millennia, never knowing the harsh realities that had shaped humanity. Dr. Webb leaned forward. "Captain, we need to understand what we're facing. The swarm has consumed 17 civilizations in the past decade. Each time they've grown stronger." "Show me," Martinez ordered. The holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional representation of the swarm. Sarah gasped as she saw the true scale of the enemy. The individual craft were indeed massive, but more disturbing was their behavior. They moved like a living organism, flowing around obstacles, adapting to resistance. "They're not just machines," Dr. Webb explained. "They're a hybrid of technology and biology. Each ship is part of a larger mind, a collective intelligence that learns from every encounter. That's how they've been so successful," Admiral Morrison added. "They adapt to conventional military tactics. Every species that's fought them has used traditional warfare, formation flying, predictable strategies, honor codes." Martinez smiled grimly. "Good thing we don't fight fair." High Counselor Vextai looked confused. "What do you mean?" "We mean," Martinez replied, "that we're going to teach the swarm why humans are called Deathworlders." The Deathworld advantage. Sarah watched from the bridge as the human fleet dispersed throughout the Zephyria system. Unlike any military formation she had studied, the ships seemed to spread randomly, hiding behind asteroids, powered down to minimal signatures. "This is not how civilized species conduct warfare," Kethra observed nervously. "We're not civilized," Martinez replied over the comm. "We're from Earth. We're the species that looked at a planet covered in ice, poison, and things that wanted to eat us, and decided to make it home." The swarm entered the system like a dark tide. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, a flowing wall of destruction that consumed everything in its path. The outer monitoring stations simply vanished, their matter converted into more swarm units. "All units weapons free," Admiral Morrison commanded. "Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional battle. We're trying to survive long enough to teach them something new." The first human ship to engage was the UES Defiance, a destroyer that had been hiding in the shadow of an asteroid. Instead of announcing its presence or demanding surrender, it simply opened fire at point-blank range with nuclear torpedoes. The swarm ship, caught completely off guard, exploded in a brilliant flash. The surrounding swarm units immediately changed course to investigate, moving with their characteristic fluid coordination. That's when the real ambush began. Human ships emerged from hiding spots throughout the asteroid field, firing everything they had before disappearing again. Unlike the formation battles the swarm was accustomed to, this was guerrilla warfare. Hit and run, strike and fade, never giving the enemy a chance to adapt. Impossible, Keithra whispered as she watched the display. They're fighting like predators. We are predators, Sarah replied. We evolved from hunters. Every human instinct is designed for tracking, stalking, and killing prey that doesn't want to die. The swarm tried to adapt, sending faster units to pursue the human ships. But the humans had anticipated this, leading their pursuers into carefully prepared kill zones where multiple ships waited in ambush. The swarm collective is becoming confused, Dr. Webb reported. They're used to predictable responses. Human tactics are too chaotic for their algorithms. Captain Martinez's voice came over the calm despite the battle raging around him. All units, execute Operation Crazy, Ivan. Sarah had never heard of Operation Crazy Ivan, but she watched in amazement as the human fleet began to implement it. Ships that had been retreating suddenly turned and charged directly at swarm formations. Others began spinning randomly while firing, making their movements impossible to predict. Some ships began ramming swarm units, their crews ejecting at the last second to be picked up by other vessels. "This is insane," Vextai gasped. "No," Martinez replied. "This is human." The price of victory. The battle raged for 6 hours. The swarm, accustomed to overwhelming civilized opponents with superior numbers and technology, found itself facing something it had never encountered, an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. Human ships used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They hid behind debris, used civilian stations as shields, and even rammed disabled swarm units to prevent them from being recovered. Most shocking of all, they seemed to have no fear of death. Why do they fight? Like this? Kethra asked as she watched a human destroyer sacrifice itself to destroy a swarm command ship. Because we're the species that invented the concept of acceptable losses, Sarah replied. We're the species that learned to die for strangers. The turning point came when Captain Martinez implemented the final phase of his plan. The surviving human ships formed a tight formation around the Zephyrian homeworld, not in a defensive posture but as bait. All swarm units are converging on our position, the tactical officer reported. We're outnumbered 50-1. Perfect, Martinez replied. All units, execute final gambit. The human ships suddenly scattered, revealing what they had been protecting. The Zephyrians had been busy during the battle, using their advanced engineering skills to construct something new under human direction, a massive gravitational weapon. Now, Martinez commanded. The weapon activated, creating an artificial black hole in the center of the swarm formation. The swarm units, caught in the gravitational field, were pulled inexorably toward destruction. But even as they died, they adapted, trying to escape the gravity well. That's when the humans showed the galaxy why they were truly feared. All ships ramming speed, Admiral Morrison ordered. Take as many as you can with you. One by one, the human ships charged into the gravity well, their crews manning their stations until the last second. They didn't flee, didn't try to escape. They died fighting, ensuring that every swarm unit was destroyed. Sarah watched from the medical frigate as the last human battleship, the UES Endeavour, made its final run. Captain Martinez's voice came, over the comm one last time. "Tell Earth," he said, "that we answered the call." The explosion lit up the entire system. After the storm, the silence that followed the battle was deafening. Of the 47 ships that had answered the Zephyrian distress call, only 3 medical frigates remained. The swarm was gone, completely destroyed, but the cost had been almost everything. Ambassador Kethra stood in the ruins of the Human Fleet Command Center, her translucent skin pulsing with grief patterns she had never felt before. Around her, the surviving humans worked to rescue their wounded, their faces grim but determined. "I don't understand," she said to Sarah, who was coordinating the medical evacuation. "Your people died for us, for strangers you had never met. Why?" Sarah looked up from her data pad, her eyes red with exhaustion and grief. "Because that's what we do. We're the species that heard a cry for help from across the galaxy and said yes. We're the species that looks at impossible odds and asks, how can we win? Not, should we try? But the cost," Sarah interrupted, "is what we pay for being human. We're the species that learned that some things are worth dying for, and apparently, you're one of them." High Counselor Vex Tai approached. Them, his luminous form dimmed with sorrow. "The Galactic Alliance has been monitoring our communications. They're amazed. They want to know how humans achieved victory against the swarm.